one. Okay, live now. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on October 11th. Today, we're going to be unlocking operational efficiencies with AI/ML-based insights with Tanzu Insights, and this was formerly known as VMware ARIA Insights. I'll be your host today, just kind of transitioning the conversation and kind of pulling in your questions, and really excited to kind of hear from our speaker here today, Kieran Brine, who is a Senior Director of Product Management here. So just some housekeeping rules or housekeeping reminders. Please put your questions in the chat box below so that our speaker can get to them, answer them, and hopefully answer them to the fullest extent. And with that being said, we'd also love for you guys to give us any feedback on how we're doing, what you'd like to see in the future, and what we can bring to you that would give you value and things like that. So the call is recorded, and tomorrow you'll get an email with a link to view it as well as some resources. So now I'll kind of hand it over to Kieran to kick it off and talk to you about Tanzu Insights. Kieran, take the mic.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine, and hi, everybody. So yeah, looking forward to sharing more about how we can unlock operational efficiency with Tanzu Insights. So if we move to the next slide, please. So yeah, let's just quickly talk about the agenda. So what we're going to talk about today is an overview of Tanzu Intelligent Services, where Insights fits into Tanzu Intelligent Services. We're going to talk about the challenges, AI ops and observability, how we see the two of those coming together. We'll talk about the key solutions and capabilities of Tanzu Insights, key features and capabilities of Tanzu Insights, and then we'll also provide a solution overview. And there will be opportunities at the end where we'll share additional information and resources for people. So thank you. So let's move to the next slide, please. So Tanzu Intelligent Services, it's a newly formed part of the Tanzu platform. It was announced recently at VMware Explorer in Las Vegas. And Tanzu Intelligent Services actually consists of these four main pillars, which is really around the transformer, which helps enterprises that need to perform cloud migration. Guardrails is really around governance. Cloud health is cost allocations, chargeback. It's a costing offering. And Tanzu Insights, which is really our infrastructure and application observability offering. There's a portion of the solution that we'll talk about today that was formerly Tanzu Observability, operations for applications. And since then, we've actually added some additional capabilities, which is really Tanzu Insights, which is what we're talking about today in some more detail. And yeah, so just a primer for observability. So the observability stack that we're going to talk about today is really powered by area operations for applications. Like I said, formerly Tanzu Observability. And that observability solution consists of the melt stack. So metrics, events, logs, and traces. That's pretty much table stakes in this space right now. And what we firmly believe in is having a unified observability. In other words, the ability to bring all of this data together, a single view, a single way to access, whether it's a log, a metric, metrics associated with logs, and so on. So that you can do that deep troubleshooting and analysis. So really, what's the problem we're trying to solve? So there's two major areas, and they're related. The first one is really around disparate tools and complexity of monitoring systems. And having disparate tools means that your application, your infrastructure, your network is essentially, it's disconnected. You don't have a single way to view all of that information. So when you're troubleshooting an application issue, you want to see if it's related to the infrastructure or the network. Is the network causing application issues, or is the application actually causing the issue? We're often dealing with, particularly in large enterprises, large organizations, dealing with large volumes of events, data. The data itself is fragmented to the earlier point. And then there's also multiple tools that customers have. So some people have a tool for metrics and a separate tool for logs and possibly even another tool for traces. And again, you get into the scenario there where you're missing the contextual visibility. This is something that we hear repeatedly from our customers, which is environments are getting more complex, the scale of data is increasing, and it's increasingly difficult to find, fix, and resolve issues. So go to the next slide, please. So what we see happening at Tanzu Insights is really a convergence of observability and AI ops. AI ops was coined by Gartner maybe 2014, 2015. And it really started off in the event management space with some very specialist vendors. However, those vendors struggled from things like data quality, the ability or need to enrich the data, lacking kind of awareness and contextual awareness of the data that actually is being provided to it. So these vendors often didn't have underlying observability. They were taking events alerts from many disparate systems that they actually didn't know about. And it took a lot of time and effort to actually stitch all of that data together to produce something meaningful. And then on the right hand side, we've got application observability, which is really where area operations for applications comes in, which is giving you that full melt stack. So the convergence that we see happening is those AI ops capabilities are really being married or blended with the application observability. So if you think of this as how do we bring observability and AI ops together, that's really what we consider intelligent observability, which is the offering and solution that we have, which is Tanzu Insights. So really what is if we talk about, what's the purpose that we have for building Tanzu Insights, it's really about increasing efficiency, increasing developer productivity, and really producing actionable insights. What I mean by that is, in many cases, organizations generate lots and lots of events and alerts. Many of them, most of them are actually not actionable. And what we believe by powering solutions with AI and machine learning, that we can find those issues faster than by providing the deep contextual information that's coming from the observability offering. We enable those users to do deeper troubleshooting and analysis based on the thing that was detected. So really, if we think of an insight is analogous to an issue. And we want those users to be able to find and fix those issues as quickly as possible. And then we'd have a unified experience when I talked about observability being in the mix here as well. That's where we can bring in the melt stack and have that power, the insight, so that if you do need to do that deep troubleshooting into a Kubernetes cluster and need to look at the control plane, you have that at your fingertips. And the final piece is that you can discern insights from full stack event correlation. That's where you can bring in, as I mentioned earlier, the application stack, the network stack, the infrastructure stack, and see all of those in one place, so that then when you are troubleshooting, you are able to see kind of what is impacting what, where in the stack is the actual issue. So it's really about collecting, investigating, and actioning on those data elements, and with the real goal of meeting and exceeding SLAs and SLOs. So if we think about kind of how does that all happen? So again, what we're really trying to do is reduce mean time to detect and reduce mean time to resolve. So how can we find an issue as quickly as possible? And how can we resolve that issue after we've found it as quickly as possible? And in the initial launch of Tanzu Insights, which the availability was announced last week, we have powering by several integrations, one of which is ARIA operations for application, as I mentioned, the underlying observability offering that supports any Kubernetes flavor, any platform, TAS, which many of our the customers of ARIA operations for applications are TAS customers, large complex environments, supporting hundreds of integrations. Metrics, logs, and traces is the bread and butter of ARIA operations for applications. Tanzu Insights is built on what's called Tanzu Hub, and Tanzu Hub is a way that we can bring the Tanzu intelligent services together and other parts of the Tanzu platform together. And if you decide or don't have if you do not have ARIA operations for applications, then you can use the direct integrations with the cloud providers or with Kubernetes from the Tanzu Hub. So it's a better together story if you have ARIA operations for applications. If not, you can still get quite a lot of value from the offering. What are we doing? We're performing correlation, impact analysis, root cause analysis, powered by AI and machine learning. If users want to be notified of a particular issue, if they want to look at perform a post-incident review to see what happened, how did the issue unfold, what happened, who did what, who took what action, and so on. All of that information is available. So yeah, if we go to the next slide, please. And again, just a reminder, metrics logs, events logs, traces, the melt stack, powering observability, and Tanzu Insights. Think of Tanzu Insights as something that sits on top of that observability stack. And that Tanzu Insights is gleaning and uncovering issues and incidents from that underlying observability data and presenting that to the user so that they can reduce mean time to detect and mean time to resolve, essentially. And just to call out here, these are a subset of the integrations that are supported by ARIA operations for applications. I've highlighted some of the ones that are specific to the Tanzu. The ones that are in yellow are specific to Tanzu, so you can see, or the VMware ecosystem. So you can see things in there like TAS, TKG, Gemfire, TMC, and so on. So we have the full gamut of integrations available, whether it's for developers, whether it's for the VMware ecosystem, whether it's for the Tanzu ecosystem or beyond. And any of these integrations that generate events and alerts, that is the thing that Tanzu Insights consumes. And Tanzu Insights will take those events and alerts and form an insight with that data. And I'll hand the baton over to Mike, who's going to take us through the solution overview.
Hey, Mike, I think you're on mute. So if you want to come off.
That's better. Sorry about that. I didn't want to accidentally make any noise over here. Anyway, what we're looking at here on this slide is the logical view of how things happen. We collect the alerts and events from the different systems. So as Karen said, ARIA operations for logs, ARIA operations for applications, AWS, Azure, any Kubernetes. That event and alert data comes into the Insights engine. It goes through a series of steps: data normalization, source deduplication, data enrichment, and then AI ML starts to take over, and it does summarization, data correlation, and probable root cause analysis. And that generates the insights. So let's walk through how that's going to look. So in this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to look at, in this example, we're going to look at, there's a deployment of a new Kubernetes operator currently rolling out. This is a prod deployment, so the SREs are on call, making sure things go smoothly and can act fast in case any problems arise. Should a problem arise, and there's an issue within the cluster, to service the request, customers will be impacted to Customers will be impacted and SLOs will be degraded. So if there's a problem, it's going to have bad effects. The SRE team has been monitoring the deployment when VMware, the Insights starts to collect and correlate the events and alerts from ARIA operations for application into a single insight. So that's the scenario. It'll probably make a little more sense as we go through the different screens that we'll see as part of this how to use Insights. So we first start out with the correlation of observations. Tanzu Insights detects several events being emitted from the Kubernetes cluster and groups them together under a single insight. Here we're seeing what the Kubernetes operator installing the liveness probe failures. We've got, it's grouped by resource. We can see that we're getting some alerts earlier and some things come in later on the screen on your right. The events are reporting that there's not enough resources. So if you can read those descriptions, it says that they're not getting enough resources to schedule the operator to deploy within the cluster. So there's something that's blocking the deployment. CPU memory alerts from ARIA operations for applications were also correlated, but as you can see on the very bottom alert, those are coming in later and are adding to the insight overall. So then we move into impact analysis. Many of the workloads that are generating the alerts are connected to critical services within the K8's cluster. So you can see in the upper diagram, what are the relationship of the different objects inside the environment. So the SREs can also then hover and click on things and review the rate, the transaction rate, the error rate, and the duration of those transactions. So again, you really want to these are the key indicators of how an application is performing. So we can see those metrics, and they don't see anything out of bounds yet, but they're being notified that there are some issues from other parts, but not being affected right at this minute. The SREs see that since many of the workloads are interconnected, meaning that a service outage could have a really bad downstream effect if it's not contained early. So everything's fine right now. You can see the interconnection. We know that if the dam breaks, there's going to be problems downstream. So then we're looking at the probable cause, and we're digging into that. So now the SRE team has started to communicate with the developers who wrote the code for the new deployment to start beginning to figure out what things are happening. The dev teams pushed out a Kubernetes operated deployment that's successfully installed, but started running into liveness probe failures. So again, that's the first indicators that things are starting to go bad. After chatting with dev, the SREs find out that the CPU limits for the containers were reduced to reduce the overall CPU footprint for the cluster. This caused the CPU and memory to spike because they're being constrained. So the problem resolution screen, and we can see how this flows through the system. It's based on the correlations provided by ARIA Insights. The SREs are able to determine that the code change in the new operator deployment created the spikes in CPU and memory. After dev reverts their changes and redeploys, no additional events are generated. As the CPU and memory go below their alerting threshold, ARIA Insights updates and marks those alerts as resolved, as you can see on the screenshot right here. You also have the ability to add notes as you're going through. So if you have to pass this issue along, you can actually pass notes and information with that so you stay in context. So what did we just see, and where is the AI ML stepping in? So the insight creation correlation is really AI and ML at work. It's correlating events and insights. The model's based on observations collected, overall topology, time of events, and natural language, things like tags, names, sources, and a variety of others. Gen AI is used for the proactive remediation based on alerts, observations, severity, identification, fault classification, clustering, and identifying probable cause. Again, bringing all these things together under a single piece. The idea is to be able to scale the application without downtime and continuously optimize your applications. Do closed loop real-time optimization so we can see how things are being constrained or not, be able to adjust those as we go. The whole thing is anchored by a common data platform. And that's really the key to get the correlation and the integration. And that platform's ARIA Hub and Graph, or Tanzu Hub. The one view of the apps and the environments across a single team, across the different teams. So you get one view of the environment across all the teams. So everybody's not using their own tools. They're coming to a common data source that's being fed by their tools. So how do you get started? Scan the QR code and check out the following resources. This is going to bring you to the Tanzu Insights main page. There's a solution brief there. There's a new Tanzu Insights introduction blog. And there's also a button to sign up for the free tier of Tanzu Insights. So again, being able to get your feet wet, connect to a couple of data sources, start seeing the power of the overall system. So if you want to get into a bigger environment, if you want to start doing a further, more in-depth review of the system, we can also contact your VMware sales team. With that, I want to thank you. If you've got any questions, please put them into the Q&A under the question mark icon. Sharon and I will both be here to answer questions. And I wanted to thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Great session. I feel like we got a lot of context about Insights platform. I'll go ahead and maybe ask some questions here that we've received. So the first one is, how could I add ARIA operations for applications to Tanzu Insights?
So there's a connector for that. So again, it will be able to collect data from ARIA operations for applications. So that data will be able to come, the events that are generated within ARIA operations for applications will be then brought into Tanzu Insights and be able to correlate. Now that becomes part of the entire pool that they can correlate data across. It'll also become it'll also add in the AI objects that are part of the topology.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Is there anything or like last minute pieces of advice about an Insights platform or unified observability that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, one thing I'd leave the audience with is that I think AI ops capabilities are going to be critical based on the amount of observability data that exists, and it's growing in complexity. And as companies are transitioning to cloud native environments, the complexity is only increasing. And our view is that you need to underpin that with a modern observability, and that's not enough. You also need to have modern observability with AI capabilities, because you're going to have so much observability data. How are you going to know what you need to action, and what are you going to need to work on, and what are the things that are most important? And when those issues do occur, how can you find and fix them as quickly as possible? And we believe that there's no other way to do that except for using AI and machine learning. And we also feel that ARIA operations for applications and Tanzu Insights are and will become one, and that's how we see it. now, and over time you'll see much more integration, and it will be seamless to you that it's really a solution. Tanzu Insights is a solution powered by area operations for applications. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't have our area operations for applications, we can also make that work. But the power is really if you're bringing in that contextual data, and we believe that there is no other way to solve these problems. And we'd love for people on the call to try it out and give us feedback.
Yeah, we regularly see customers that have thousands of events, so many events that they don't know how to prioritize them. By using insights, this really consolidates this down to what should I look at first, and really gives you a place to start, and then helps you several steps into that with where are the probable causes, what is it connected to, what is related, so you can really determine what the impact is to the overall organization.
Cool, thanks guys. I think there was another question from the audience. Pretty simple. Is this available now? Is this all available now?
Yes, it is. Scan the QR code, and if you're an existing area operations for applications customer, then you can absolutely use Insights with that today. If you're not, you can still use Insights, as I mentioned, and the launch of Insights happened last week, actually. So it's available right now. Insights is a native service built on Tanzu Hub.
And you can bring in your existing cloud, AWS and Azure cloud accounts, or just a couple of them, and bring them in and give it a try on the free tier. There are some limitations at the free tier, so you want to look at those. But as we can go well beyond that with the paid for version.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Karen and Mike. This was a great session. And just a quick reminder for our audience members, definitely scan the QR code, take a look at all the cool new resources, and sign up for the free tier like Mike just mentioned. Definitely leave us some feedback on how you liked the session or what you'd like to see in future webinar events and sessions along that sort. And we thank you for your time once again, and we'll see you next time.
One thing,
go ahead, Mike.
Just to let you know before we close, the session is recorded. We know that some people had some resolution issues with the slides. It's going to be recorded, so hopefully everything was clear on my side, that I'm looking at basically the same stream. So it's going to depend upon where you are in bandwidth and a variety of other things. But the recording should have everything clear. That'll be available shortly after the webinar concludes.
Yes. Thanks, Mike.
Also, I'm sorry. Hard to get me to shut up, but we have a little bit of extra time. If you have more in-depth questions or you think of them later, contact your VMware sales team. They can get you into contact with one of us, and we can definitely work with you to answer those questions or get you a more in-depth view of the product or the solution.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day and a fantastic week. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.